Morning. Richard here on a beautiful Saturday morning. I would be coming to you live from outside so we could enjoy a beautiful Hawaiian day, but there's a lot going on out there. The gardeners are here, and Kimmy's doing a coaching Zoom from out there. And so I'm going to hide and come to you from the office. And I'll be brief this morning, but potent, because I have something to share with you. Here's a share. This is a vulnerable share. So I just got off the phone for about the last 45 minutes with one of my best friends in life. Gosh, I've known him for 50 plus years. And he is fighting gallantly terminal cancer. And I don't know if he's at the end of that fight or if he's in the middle of it. From the sounds of it, if it were me, it would be at the end of it. But who knows, right? Miracles happen. They happen all the time. And um, so, that's something to think about. Life is short. And, this is a guy who worked his entire life planning on having a beautiful retirement, retired twice, two different careers. And he and his wife have a beautiful life, all set up. They moved to northern Idaho from California, got involved in horses, which is their dream, and bought a wakeboarding boat and, lived on the lake and living the dream finally, after about 50 years of a lot of work and a lot of responsibility and a lot of navigating life. And then, a year, not even a year, 6 months into, this beautiful retirement, which could have and should have lasted 30 or 40 years, he gets the worst kind of cancer. And I know this happens to so many people in your life, so many people in my life. One of the downsides of having lots and lots of relationships all over the world is all these things get connected to us, right? And so it takes more strength for us to support people, but nothing compared to the strength that it takes if it were happen to us, right? So as Kevin and I were talking about, his life and our life, one of the things that we talked about was how many of us, very close friends from high school, fell early. I mean, we've lost dozens of close friends to cancer, mostly. Some to drugs and alcohol, but mostly to cancer. And some of them, right out of school. And so, as the theme of this morning's conversation is graduation. Some of my team said, "Hey, there's a lot of people going through graduation right now. Why don't you talk about graduation?" I thought, well, that's kind of ironic. I cheated to get out of high school, and I don't have any biological children that I've gone through the graduation process with. So, what do I have to say about that? And so it just struck me though that life's short. So, hey, love your children and give them room, right? Because you never know. They may only have 5 or 10 years. They may only have 5 or 10 years. So how do you want them to live that 5 or 10 years? How do they want to live that 5 or 10 years? If you don't know, now, yeah, it is sort of morbid to assume the worst. You're not assuming the worst. You're just considering the possibility because it does happen. I think of Steve Peterson. I just talked to his brother yesterday on email. I've known Steve since I was like, I don't know, 5 years old. And we grew up next to each other and the closest of friends. We've done all kinds of crazy things together. And Steve, he had a different high school than I did. He got straight A's and he went to, where did he go? I don't know, UC Davis and then McGeorge Law School, I think. Anyway, by the time I'm cutting chickens, Steve's graduating from law school. And, his dream was to be a water lawyer in California, which is somebody that navigates all the water laws because water is the new oil. Yeah, oil's nice, but if you don't have water, that makes water more valuable. That was his dream, was to be a water lawyer and navigate all of that for the state of California and farmers and residents and the environment. And he got married, and he had two kids, and he died of cancer. Boom. I mean, he couldn't have been more than 28 years old. And I can't even tell you how many times that's happened in my life to people that I've known personally. So my message to you parents who have children graduating is what I see in parenting. I've never done it. So yes, I'm a hypocrite and I have no business talking to you about this at all. And if you hang up on me, I will completely understand. But what I see in parents is this will, almost this genetic will to stamp our children in the vision of us. Maybe it's the life that we lived, or maybe it's the life we wish we would have lived, but we're like, managing it all. Like, you got to do this and you got to do that, and you should do this and you should do that, and you should get these kind of grades and go to this kind of school and have this kind of career and have these kind of kids and raise them in this kind of religion, and you should vote for these kind of people and have these kind of values, and you should vacation here and you should save all your money and you should whatever, right? We're just always looking to stamp these human beings, these precious spiritual beings, into the image of us, which uncannily is the image of our parents, which is the image of our grandparents, our great grandparents, our great great grandparents. And you don't have to go back very far before we're trying to duplicate weird people. So here's something to think about, folks. Just what if you just encourage these kids as they go through this rite of passage of graduation, whether it's junior high, high school to college, college out into the real world? What if we just love them and let them run? Love them and let them run. Let them figure it out. Let them make the mistakes. Let them find their bliss. Let them find their own way. Because ultimately, that's what people want to end up doing. Maybe it takes them 20 or 30 or 40 years to figure that out. But that's what they want, is they want to find their own way. And they want to be authentic, because until you and I are real, we're authentic, we're living our life, we found our bliss, our nirvana, we're not real, and we're not real powerful until we find that. And so, I don't know anything about graduating kids, and I don't know anything about graduation, but I know something about stories. And so, what I would ask you on this Saturday morning in graduation time, if you're a parent or a grandparent or a great grandparent, or you're maybe one of the ones who's graduating, what's your story? What's your story about your kids graduating? What's your story about your grandkids graduating? And how does that story manifest in their expectations? What are they trying to live up to? How is your story influencing them? And I know we all, as parents, want to influence our children to be better, to not make mistakes, right? Don't marry those people. Don't take that job, but don't eat that stuff, right? We don't spend that money on that. We all want to do that because we want our kids, I presume. The closest I can come is Haley, my stepchild, who I love immensely dearly, but I know it's different than those of you that actually raised those children. But I want her to have the best life. But one of the things I've learned from working with so many people on their journey in life is the best thing for Haley is for Haley to figure it out, which includes Haley making some mistakes, maybe some tough ones. And because that's the only way we learn, right? We don't learn because our mom and dad said so. We really don't. We may be influenced, but we don't really learn. So that's what I have to say this Saturday morning. I'm going to leave you with one profound thing that my reticular activator found for me when I'm asking myself, what on earth am I going to talk about Saturday morning when it comes to graduating? Because I don't know. What do I know about that? Who's going to listen to me around that? And so fortunately, I called Kevin and Pam this morning to catch up, and that gave me something to talk about. And then my reticular activator, which is that, that's that radar that's always looking for what we deem to be important. It found this the other day. And I'll read it to you in case you're listening to me in the car or something. This is from Scott Galloway, who is one of, he's top 5 people I read and listen to. He's brilliant, very successful investor, business guy, marketing guy, but he's also a philosopher. And he wrote this yesterday in his daily, or maybe it's weekly, I can't remember, blog called No Mercy, No Malice. You can find him at Prof Galloway. So, title of his blog is Tethered Perspective. My week has been a cocktail of layoffs, margin calls, and COVID. How's your week going? Layoffs would be tied to the stock market crashing. Markets are down, the risk of nuclear war is up, and worst of all, it looks as if Cumrocket will not replace the dollar. Cumrocket, I suppose, is some cryptocurrency he's making fun of. Professor Adam Alter, my colleague at New York University, says dramas perform best in good times and comedies in bad. So I don't want to read more bad news, much less write into its shadow. The nitric oxide for most bad weeks is a small dose of perspective administered by awake and aware. One shortcut to this perspective for me is to think about my parents. They both had good lives, but when it comes to opportunities presented as a function of where and when a person was born, I'm from a different planet. I saw my dad this week. He's 91, and the paths of conversation are getting narrower and fewer. His favorite, he asked me about my life, the things people pay me for, to speak in front of an audience, scroll. How much they pay me, which I guess they pay him a lot. The school field trips my boys take, the Grand Canyon, and that I have a TV show. He had like one episode of some kind of business talk show or something, but it got canceled after the first episode. But I didn't tell him that the plug was pulled. It used to bother and upset me that he'd ask the same questions over and over. Then I realized it's just fine. Good even. If he finds joy from the same thing. I personally experienced that with my mom and Alzheimer's. Is what you learn as a caretaker or a child of somebody with Alzheimer's is the first thing you learn is don't argue, because there's no cheese down that tunnel, because this is not about facts and it's not about being right. It's about the perspective of somebody with Alzheimer's, which is different than yours and mine. So don't argue. And number 2, 3 things I learned. Number 2, don't ask your parent with Alzheimer's, do you remember when? Because they don't. Or insist that they should remember somebody or some event, because they don't. And the third thing I learned was let them ask the same questions over and over and over and over and over again, and answer them just as enthusiastically as you did the first time, as opposed to being completely annoyed and letting them know that they've already asked you that 57 times. Because that's the life of somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. As Scott brilliantly says here, the lane gets narrower and narrower and narrower. I digress, and now back to Scott. But inevitably, I think more about my mom and the self-worth she instilled in me. The following was written 5 years ago when we had fewer than 5,000 subscribers. I don't know how many he has now, but I'll bet it's millions. Which means there's a 2% chance you've already read it. It felt good writing it, and I hope it does the same thing for you. So I guess he has 100,000 subscribers. So he wrote this, Scott Galloway wrote this 5 years ago, 2017, title Tethered. In relationships, I've gotten so much wrong with so many people for so long. With romantic partners, I focused on managing the person versus being honest and open, creating an uneasy calm interrupted by shock and disappointment. Professionally, I've expected employees to be loyal as well, just because I'm so profanity awesome. Instead of investing in understanding their objectives and calibrating my efforts to address our mutual aspirations. One place I've gotten it right with the people most important to me: affection. I rub my boys' ears and backs. I brush their hair and roughhouse with them so as to demonstrate my strength for about a second, and then collapse on them and begin kissing and tickling them. I've recorded several minutes of us wrestling, especially the sound my boys make when they burst into joyous, uncontrollable laughter. This will be the last thing I hear on this planet. I've prepared for this. He recorded it to listen to it in his dying moments. In contrast, at work, I'm less affectionate than Darth Vader. It kind of reminds me of me, doesn't he, Sissy? I work with people on average 20 years younger than me, and the thought of creeping somebody out with an unwelcome hug or a hand on their shoulder in a professional situation is horrific to me. As a result, I don't even like to shake hands. I don't have that problem. Affection exchange theory, introduced by Professor Corey Floyd, postulates that affection strengthens bonds and provides access to resource and communicates your potential as a parent, increasing your pool of potential mates. I think it goes even deeper. I know a lot of people who, despite their good fortune, are wandering. Few meaningful relationships, an inability to find reward in their professional lives, too hard on themselves, as if they're not grounded, never convinced of their worth, wandering. And I can personally tell you folks that this is almost everybody. This is almost everybody not convinced of their worth and wandering. And when you have low self-esteem, you don't connect with people. You're not vulnerable with people. You don't love people. You hide, or you overcompensate with all this ego-based bravado and competition and dominance, right? Back to Scott. When I look at my own success, it boils mostly down to two things: being born an American and having someone irrationally passionate about my success. He says, my mom, though she was raised in a household where there was little affection, my mom couldn't control herself with her son. For me, affection was the difference between hoping someone thought I was wonderful and worthy and knowing it. I'm going to repeat that. For me, affection was the difference between hoping someone thought I was wonderful and worthy and knowing it. Every Wednesday night after Boy Scouts, my mom and I would go to dinner at Junior's Deli on Sepulveda Boulevard in Culver City. I would have the brisket dip. She had lox, eggs, and onions. We talked about our week. We didn't see each other much between weekends, I think because they were divorced. Their parents were divorced. Only to be interrupted by different waitresses who would comment on how much I'd grown. On the way out, we'd stop at the bakery and buy a quarter pound of halva. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe a Jewish thing. As we stood in the parking lot waiting for the valet to retrieve our lime green Opel Manta, my mom would grab my hand and in an exaggerated fashion swing back and forth. She'd look at me and I'd return her gaze with an eye roll, at which point she would burst out in joyous, uncontrollable laughter. She loved me so much. Having a good person express how wonderful you are hundreds of times changes everything. Having a good person express how wonderful you are hundreds of times changes everything. College, professional success, an impressive mate, these were aspirations, not givens, for a remarkable, unremarkable kid in an upper, lower middle class household. My mom was 43, single, and making $22,000 a year as a secretary. That's his mom. She was also a good person who gave me the confidence while waiting for our Opal, their car, to feel connected and to believe I had value, that I was capable and deserving of all things. Holding hands and laughing, I was tethered. Life is so rich. So, my message to you that have graduating children, any children graduating anything, is to tether them with love and affirmations about their brilliance, because, folks, children naturally gravitate towards being vulnerable, being lost, being not sure of their value. The job of the parent is to actually not direct people's values, what they should believe in, what they should value in life, but to develop their value as a human being so that they feel loved, that they feel value. And with love and value, folks, self-esteem, human beings can chart their own course. They can figure it out. And yes, they may end up different than you as a parent. And the mature, confident thing for you to do is have that be okay. That takes self-esteem as well. And that's my message this Saturday morning for all of you parents that have graduating children. Share it if it has value. See you next week.